Hey, must be Thursday. It's Family Matters with Kevin Petersen.
Yes, sir. Jay Staples, what's going on, my friend? Now coming to you live from Nashville, Tennessee.
Beautiful Nashville. Yes, absolutely. So, good things. Good things.
Yeah.
Dallas is in the rearview mirror, but
Yeah.
no,
Okay.
I'm still going to be in Dallas. So, to all
You're
those
gonna be.
people, I'm not turning my back. It's just want something new. So, I'm living out my music career.
Like, you can't be held down to one place.
So it's like, yeah, I'm you know what, I felt I'm 47. It's time to chase my music dreams. So, my new record is, we're going to the studio to cut my new record. And
Yeah, you got a contract with
no, I'm going to be independent and independent.
Oh,
You know, I don't want to be bogged down with, people telling me what I can and can't sing about. I just want to sing what's on my heart.
got it. Got it.
So, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. It's ridiculously warm here. I mean, we've just had this insane weather pattern where it's like 80 degrees outside, you know.
Well,
And
I am not going to bitch about the heat anymore because it's mid 60s here. It's going to get up to mid 60s. It starts out about 45 in the mornings though. So definitely a new experience for me. So
gotcha. Well, that's it'll drop 10 more degrees tomorrow, but anyway, enough of that.
it's best weather, it's hoodie weather. I'm happy, but I'm sure it's going to wear on me pretty quick. But careful what you pray for. That's all I'm saying.
That's right.
Sometimes, more often than not, prayers come true. It just may not be immediate. But all right, we do this every week. Family Matters. We try to stump Kevin with your questions, and we'll go live. And you can always, if you're going to tune in or a replay, can always type in a question, and we will get to it as soon as we possibly can. So let's get right into it. Kevin, how do we address the guilt and blame we feel for not noticing sooner? We're struggling with the feelings of guilt. Could we have done something sooner? And now, are we somehow responsible for this? It's hard not to feel like we missed signs or failed as parents. How do we work through the feelings we can truly help?
Oh my gosh, what a great way to start the day. This is, I mean, well, no, this is music to my ears because so much of what I normally get is how do we control our person? And I'm like, okay, here we go again. That's not what we're trying to accomplish here. This is a family that's obviously willing to take a look at themselves and saying, oh man, we got some stuff we need to deal with aside from our person that's struggling with drugs and alcohol and mental health issues. And the answer is, guess what? You got to do the exact same thing that you want your loved one to do. So what does that mean? Individual therapy, not family therapy, individual therapy. And going after things like you just said, the guilt, the shame, the regret, and by the way, it's grief and loss, because what you're doing is grieving what you think is the loss of what you thought you had. And so you want to find someone that does that and through a trauma lens. And that's the best advice I can give anybody. And I mean, that's the answer. I can talk on for 5 more minutes, but that is the answer. And there's no magic. There's a bunch of great books you can read. I think going to some 12-step meetings and working the steps would be really critical for someone that's in that space, because the steps for codependence address those issues. And so therapy, education, 12-step meetings for yourself. To me, those are the 3 pillars of how to address your grief and loss and your codependence over the family system. and the dynamics of the family system. To me, that's the best way to go. No two ways about it.
I like it. Well, here's another thing. It may be the exact same, but you'll love this one too, because like I smiled when I heard it. I thought that you actually wrote this one. So it basically says what paraphrasing, but what can we do to heal as a family beyond the intervention? We're starting to understand the journey isn't just about our loved one, our son. It's ours too. How do we begin healing as a family, even while they're still in early stages of recovery? What practices or routines can we start now to rebuild trust and connection? So much same lines. Is that kind of the same answer?
Yeah, I mean but I'm really excited to have these questions. I mean, to me, this is a family that's, not just like, okay, how do we control his process? This family is willing to say, okay, how do we take care of ourselves? How do we practice self-care? Everyone says self-care, self-care, self-care. What the hell is self-care? Well, here's the answer. Individual therapy, not family therapy, individual therapy, because every one of you has a different experience. You feel the process differently. You go through it differently. You have different needs and wants, and et cetera, et cetera. So individual therapy. Education. There's tons of great books on attachment, on family dynamics, on families and addiction and trauma, and there's just all sorts of great stuff there. And then one of my favorite phrases is, you can't expect your loved one to do something that you're not willing to do. So if you want them to get into recovery and work the 12 steps, so do you. And I want to be clear, that doesn't mean, oh, I go to Al-Anon. That doesn't count. I mean, that's great. That's a third of the equation. You got to go, you got to get a sponsor, you got to work the steps. So that's the key. And so if you look at people that are in recovery for drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex, codependence, family systems, whatever, the ones that are deeply in recovery, they go to therapy, they go to 12-step, and they educate themselves on how to make it have a better life. And so that's the key. Those are the pillars right there.
Well, this family says post-intervention. So kudos. Kudos to the interventionist that did it. I don't think it was me, but but any intervention, it's basically, I think families are open to this idea that it's not just the loved one. The family needs to be intervened on too. So kudos to the interventionist or whoever you guys worked with, because they obviously, this is two different families, but that family says beyond the intervention. So it sounds like the intervention was done. So kudos to, I just want to say, because dealing with families, that's the first thing we need to understand. They need to understand is the family needs a change as well. So everyone wants the quick fix it, and the quick fix it isn't even possible. So, alrighty, how can we ensure we're on the same page as a couple, even when we approach things differently? We have different ways of responding to our son's crisis. One of us is quick to act, while the other wants to slow down and reflect. How do we align our approaches to avoid sending mixed messages and keep our relationship strong through this all?
Remember when I said previously that you need to go to individual therapy for everybody to take care of themselves? This couple needs to go to couples therapy because they're coming at the problem with two different philosophies. And so what we have to do is get someone to mediate that process. So, and that's fine, because I would say what you're going to have there is two people that are coming at it from their own individual perspective, and we need to figure out what that is and why. And then we got to figure out how to work together. Now, I've done this many, many times. I mean, it's very typical. It's very normal. And a lot of times they're broken families or blended families, and one member has an experience with something, one doesn't. And so now I would be remiss if I didn't say they should buy my book. They should read Chronic Hope, Families and Addiction, because that's one of the big things I talk about is everyone's got to get on the same page. And a good interventionist or family coach can get them on the same page. So that to me would be the first step is working with someone like you or me and sitting them down and saying, hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about let's come up with a plan, and then everybody's got to be on the same page. Because if they aren't, the individual is going to figure out what's going on, and it's going to completely collapse and fall apart. And so we got to respect everybody's wishes. And ultimately, what we kind of need to do is get to the space where, hey, here's the thing. We've tried the soft approach and the I love you approach and the, let us help you approach. And it didn't work, which is, part of, you and I come from the same space. It's like, well, let's sit them down and say, hey, we want to help you. And if they're like, F that, I'm not doing it, then we got to go to plan B, And so, plan B tends to be, how we can really, get a little tougher, but we have to have a plan for that. We don't just walk in and start, swinging. So the first step would be sitting down and talking to someone like us and engaging and talking about what's going on and why and how we work things through. And then we go from there. Yeah.
Well, reminds me of my parents. My dad's technique was, how much is this going to cost to get him out of it? And like, you're such an idiot, wants to talk right then and there and be done with it. My mom always was like, let's just wait until the next day and have a formal sit down and talk through everything. And, much of the same. They didn't know. I mean, they were just, winging it. But it's certainly true in my case that, there was definitely two different approaches. And along that same lines, I knew, who to go to when. I knew what to say to one and what to say to the other. And so we're creative people. In active addiction, we're going to kind of split when we can take advantage of any split. So I love the fact that they're saying, how can we get on the same page? Because that's going to be key.
And that's by getting someone like us to sit them down and say, believe it or not, you're on the same page. We just got to talk about what have you done so far, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and what's our next step.
Perfect.
Yeah.
What are some realistic expectations for the recovery process, and how can we stay, they say, grounded? We know there's no quick fix. But we're not sure what to expect in terms of setbacks, progress, or challenges. How can we prepare ourselves for what lies ahead and support our daughter without overwhelming her or ourselves?
Okay, I'm a little confused. Have they started this process, or is their daughter in recovery? I mean, what's your thought process there?
It sounds as if, what are realistic expectations for the recovery process, and how can we? It says that I know there's no quick fix, so it sounds, if I had to make up my head, I believe that they're probably some real early in recovery, because the fact that they kind of said, we know there's no quick fix, it sounds like someone's already been telling them that. So I make up my head that this daughter's probably in some kind of, or just entered treatment, and it sounds as if that's what we always heard. There's no quick fix. So let's say from the standpoint of someone just really early in the process of maybe going to treatment or sober living or something like that.
Yeah, so I think the important thing here with the family to understand is, and I know you and I, again, are on the same page here, is that, 30, 60, 90 days is really just about sort of waking up, and the thing people, I think, sometimes that aren't the ones going to treatment or aren't the ones that are in recovery tend to struggle with is they're like, I don't get it. He went to treatment for 30 days. He should be all better. Mm-hmm. And I get that. I mean, I completely understand that would make sense to a non-alcoholic, non-addict person. The thing is, what we're telling the person is you have to learn how to live an entirely different life. Yes, no drugs, no alcohol, But we have to change your entire lifestyle of who you are and what you are. And the truth of the matter is that takes like 2 years. So so the answer to the question is, what's a proper expectation? I would say that your daughter needs to be engaged in some sort of a managed aftercare environment for probably 18 months to 2 years. Now, does it need to be in the same level today that it is in a year? No. We lower down as we go. We stair step down. But to think that, hey, you did 30 days and well, bam, you're all set, or 90 days, or even 6 months, and then magically you're all better and you can go back into your high pressure job and that's just not realistic. The people that have the most success in gaining new sobriety are the ones that continue to engage in a managed aftercare environment. Now, look, I'm not stupid. People have jobs, they have lives, they have families, they have kids. And so I understand it's going to look different for everybody. But you can't just go home and act like I'm all better. We painted the house and now it's a different color and everything's cool. That's not how this works. So the expectation for mom and dad is make a 2-year plan and look at and what that would look like is starting in inpatient treatment, rotating down to PHP, which is like 20 hours a week, then rotating down to IOP, which is intensive outpatient. And PHP, by the way, is partial hospitalization. And then IOP, which is intensive outpatient, it's just like 12 hours a week. And then we rotate down to just doing outpatient. But these are all done under the umbrella of sober living. So we're keeping accountability, we're keeping a community, a sense of teamwork and a gang, because you and I both know that that's critical, is having your sober gang, and so if you can keep that flow going for, I would say, at least a year, if not a year and a half or two, you're going to have a much greater level of success for the individual than you are just throwing them into treatment and then throwing them back into the wild.
Yeah.
So I think I answered the question.
I think so too. I mean, but it's also important. Treatment is, I'm not against treatment by any means, but realistically, treatment is a safe environment. So if you're going into 30 days, like I always say, like, even I've been through numerous treatments, so I can just tell you, like, you're sitting in chairs, in groups, in therapy, in whatever. You're hearing all these tools and all these things that I need to be doing. But in reality is I'm not really going through it. It's basically just practice and so forth. So you're still in that safe environment. I think what you're saying is anyone coming out of 30 days and going, expecting to go right back into life, it's going to be overwhelming. I know it's for me just because like I've been shielded and so what you're saying is leveling down, which I think is the most important thing, because it introduces life gradually. And you get to that point because it's real easy to say and do everything right while in patient treatment. It's, believe you me, like for someone that has at one point no intention of ever staying sober, but sitting in treatment, you're going through the motions. And then real life hits you, and that those buddies that you drank with or used with start calling you, and what are you going to do? And you sat in a therapy session and said, like, I'm going to delete them out of my phone or whatever we practice doing. It's a whole nother thing when Davey starts calling you and say, hey, do you want to go out tonight? We got some girls. And it's like, what? And so, practice is one thing. This is real life. And so I think far too many people, if I had to say the biggest issue is, and it's unfair really to throw someone right back into life after especially 30 days of treatment, because you're really your brain's not even settled. And, whatever your losing streak you walked into that treatment center with there's going to be a lot of, and that's the whole amends process and just living. There's things that have been said, there's things that you've done, there may be legal things over your head. It doesn't magically go away is what you're. So, obviously the gradual introducing to life is, and then safe, and there's a less amount of safe environment and more life being thrown at you, but you still have that safe, like you can still go back to a sober living place to live at after treatment or whatever. You're still going to meetings, you're still having structure. So I think if anything, families fail, going back to the quick fix. But, I think what you're saying so important to have a 2-year plan.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And that's just where we see the success. The success, it's not just about eliminating the drugs and the alcohol or whatever the behavior is. It's about changing the way you live and finding new people in a new community. And that just takes time.
Yeah. And the family needs to learn that too. I mean, the separation is one thing for 30 days, but the family now is dealing with someone that's in early recovery, much like we were talking about. What are the expectations, the progress and so forth. I think you nailed in the sense that if families think that they can just send someone off to treatment and then say a prayer every night, they got to get into their own work. And I think you've always said from day one, the importance of really kind of getting into their own work. So.
Yeah, good questions today. Wow. Yeah. Families needing to do their own work and setting proper expectations for their loved one. Wow.
Well, I think your preaching is starting to slowly creep into some people. Like there was a lot of how can we change as a family? How can we prepare? Some really good questions. So I don't want to get you too excited, but you may have starting to plant some seeds with some of our, our loyal viewers or something. So I don't want to jinx it, but we get a lot of the same questions, but these kind of same, and there's this enabling, how to set boundaries, how do we, enabling compared to helping, which we deal with a lot. So, we've dealt with that. So go back and, look at some of our other previous questions or shows, but, it just seems like a different kind of question. So maybe you are making a difference, Kevin. I hate to say this because I know it's going to go straight to your head, but
you saying you think I'm rubbing off on people?
Jesus. Or they're just sick and tired of the same old thing, and they're realizing, well, maybe we need to change. But it goes back to that whole, which, you kind of, everyone that I know and trust teachers, taught me, and my family had to learn it too, is like they need to be all right. No matter if Jay or Johnny stays sober or not, like things need to change, because if they do slip up, the family needs to respond differently is what we're really ultimately saying too. So
absolutely. 100%. No questions asked. Yep.
All righty. Well, I think we had a good show.
I think so too. It's one of those days where it's like, it just makes me feel like people are actually paying attention.
That may go away, but we'll try our best to keep the momentum going. But if families can start doing their own work, I think I think we would see drastic changes within this crisis. I just believe that.
Oh yeah, no. That would be that's the single most important thing families can do is change the family system, because the person that's struggling is dependent upon the family system. And if the family system changes, it forces them to change as well. So
amen, amen, amen. So all righty, Kevin. We'll do this again next week.
All right.
Jeez.